Hello guys, good morning everybody. Welcome to our YouTube channel, right? And if I'm audible and visible, just let me know. Hanji, if I'm audible and visible, just let me know. Yes, sir. Okay. So we're gonna start our analysis for today, right? So let's look at the first major news that we have on our front page, right? So the first important news that we have is judge selection delay not advisable, says Supreme Court. Now here the question is related to the selection of judges, right? The whole thing that is very simple and we have already discussed this in our previous sessions as well. So मैं काम करता हूँ, थोड़ा सा आपको हिंट देता हूँ जजेस की अपॉइंटमेंट को लेके, जजेस की सिलेक्शन को लेके, राइट, कि हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में कोई प्रोविजन है लेट्स से फॉर द अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ जजेस, एंड देन आई विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट सर्टेन इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स लाइक द कोलिजियम सिस्टम and one important constitutional amendment that was brought in the year 2014. So let's discuss this particular news that is talking about judges appointment shall not be delayed, right? So this is the important thing that we need to understand. देखो, जब हम बात करते हैं ना, मान लीजिए कि let's say what with the procedure that we have right now for the appointment of judges. So let's say talk about the procedure for the appointment of judges, right? So when I talk about this procedure for the appointment of judges, right now what we have a collegium system. What we have the collegium system. Now when I talk about the collegium system, what are the details that we need to know when I talk about the collegium system? In the collegium system you have the Chief Justice of India plus 4 senior most judges of Supreme Court, right? So this is how collegium is constituted. That is what we have is the Chief Justice of India plus 4 Supreme Court or the senior most judges that we have of the Supreme Court. And now these particular judges, let's say this 5 judge bench that we have, they make a recommendation that is forwarded to the government of India. They make a recommendation that is forwarded to the government of India. Now recommendation is related to the appointment of judges related to Supreme Court and High Court. So as a result the matter goes to the, let's say, government of India, and the final decision that has to be taken on the basis of the recommendations that have been given by the collegium, that final decision will be taken by the government of India. This is the basic process that we have when I talk about the whole process of appointment of judges. Now question that comes in our mind is, अभी प्रॉब्लम क्या आ रही है कि यहां पे सीजीआई और 4 सीनियर मोस्ट जजेस ने, मान लीजिए इनको हम बोल सकते हैं सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोलिजियम, राइट? जैसे सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोलिजियम होता है वैसे हाई कोर्ट्स के भी कोलिजियम होते हैं. सो हियर लेट्स strictly let's say define our explanation related to Supreme Court Collegium. सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोलिजियम ने रिकमेंडेशन दे दी है, बट आगे से अगर हम बात करें, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया इसको डिले कर रही है. दे आर नॉट लेट्स से agreeing or let's say not saying anything upon this, right? ना ही वो yes बोल रहे हैं, ना ही वो no बोल रहे हैं related to this particular recommendations that have been forwarded to them by the Supreme Court Collegium. So यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन आता है कि बहुत ज्यादा जो प्रोसेस है जजेस की अपॉइंटमेंट का, that gets delayed. Why? Because there is no action on the recommendations, no action on the recommendations. As a result, this whole process gets delayed. We can say the whole process gets delayed, and as a result we see the vacancy, we see the pendency of the cases in high courts and Supreme Courts. So what we can directly relate it to, that it leads to the pendency of the cases in Supreme Court and High Court. So these are the certain things and these are the certain issues that arises when government of India does not take any action within the particular time frame, right? And when we talk about कि गवर्नमेंट ऐसा क्यों नहीं कर रही है, अगर हम बात करें क्या उसको अकाउंटेबिलिटी नहीं होनी चाहिए अगर वो एक पर्टिकुलर टाइम फ्रेम के अंदर लेट्स से दे आर नॉट पासिंग और लेट्स से अग्रीइंग टू द नेम्स. बट यहाँ पे क्या है, ना ही कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ना ही कोई हमारा कोई एक्ट है जिसके अंदर ये मेंशन किया गया है कि जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोलिजियम आगे नाम्स को रिकमेंड करेगा, देयर हैज टू बी अ पर्टिकुलर टाइम फ्रेम within which the government of India has to agree to the names, because there is no such limit of time frame as a result, what we see is the delay in the cases, that what leads to the pendency of cases in Supreme Court and High Court. And we can also say that also creates a burden on the existing judges panel that we have. So we can say it creates a burden on the existing judges, right? So these are certain issues that is basically coming up when the judges appointment is delayed, right? So this creates a lot of problems on the existing judges as well. Now this is a particular system that we have, that is what we call it as the collegium system. बट जब हम कोलिजियम सिस्टम की भी बात करते हैं ना, तो कोलिजियम सिस्टम में भी खुद कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, एज यू कैन सी ओवर हियर. तो व्हाट आर द प्रॉब्लम्स दैट इज क्वाइट विजिबल इन द कोलिजियम सिस्टम? लेट्स ट्राई टू सी, राइट. हमेशा से ये डिबेट रहती है कि कोलिजियम क्या एक बहुत ज्यादा फुल प्रूफ, अगर हम बात करें, तरीका है जहां से जजेस सेलेक्ट होते हैं. सो द प्रॉब्लम्स वी कैन से आर देयर विद द कोलिजियम सिस्टम. लाइक वन ऑफ द मेजर प्रॉब्लम इज कि यहां पे जजेस ही जजेस को रिकमेंड कर रहे हैं, अपॉइंट कर रहे हैं, राइट. सो देयर इज दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग दैट देयर इज नो checks and balances. There is no checks and balances. Why? Because judges are appointing judges themselves. So there is no checks and balances. There is no separation of, let's say, what we call it as, let's say, or we can say separation of powers. पहली चीज. दूसरी चीज जो बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है कि यहां पे हमने देखा है कोलिजियम सिस्टम के अंदर एक चीज प्रमोट होती है जो हम बॉलीवुड में भी बात करते हैं, राइट. सो दैट इज द केस ऑफ नेपोटिज्म एज वेल, राइट. अब ऐसा नहीं है कि नेपोटिज्म से हर प्रोडक्ट जो होगा और लेट्स से जो भी लेट्स से जजेस आएंगे, एवरीवन विल नॉट बी अप टू द मार्क, बट यस इट क्रिएट्स अ सर्टेन नेपोटिज्म इन दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग. नाउ कोलिजियम सिस्टम को रिफाइन करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया थ्रू द 99th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट ब्रॉट अ new commission that would have a role of executive as well in the appointment of judges. That particular, if we can say, was 99th constitutional amendment act brought in, very important, I am going to write the name, that is National Judicial Appointment Commission. क्या लेके आया था वो? National Judicial Appointment Commission. And this National Judicial Appointment Commission had the role of executive when I talk about the, let's say, in appointment of judges. So it was brought in 2014, but it was declared, we can say, null and void by the Supreme Court in 2015 on the basis of that it is not according to the basic structure of the constitution. And what is a basic structure? That was one of the arguments, that was independence of judiciary. So on this basically premise, this National Judicial Appointment Commission was declared null and void. I hope this point is clear to everybody and you are able to have a certain background and the idea related to the working of, let's say, how judges are appointed and what was the alternative that was given to it, that was National Judicial Appointment Commission. Last year there was huge debate. The judiciary, the executive, they were going at each other. Judiciary was basically flouting the, let's say, loopholes that were there in the National Judicial Appointment Commission. And if I talk about executive, they were having a go at the judiciary because they were saying that how a judges can appoint judges, there has to be role of executive, and they told that it is very important that they should have continued with National Judicial Appointment Commission that was passed with such huge majority by the legislature through the in the parliament, that is the National Judicial Appointment Commission. So there were a lot of tussle that was last year going on between executive and judiciary related to these two processes only. That was one of the collegium and second one was National Judicial Appointment Commission. Obviously judges are in the favor of collegium, but executive had a more, let's say, certain executive had an important thing that they were saying that they were more, let's say, favorable, or they were more bent towards or inclined towards implementation of National Judicial Appointment Commission, but Supreme Court had declared that as null and void. I hope you have got an idea and you are aware of this whole particular matter, right? Okay, moving to the next part. Claudia Goldin wins 2023 Economics Nobel Prize for research on workplace gender gap. Now this term is very important, that is the workplace gender gap, and this woman Claudia Goldin has won the Economics Nobel Prize. So let's try to discuss this particular thing, that is what is this workplace gender gap. You might have heard a lot of time in the news, there have been a lot of articles as well, you must have been, let's say, encountered various incidents in your daily life as well, where you have met women that they are not getting the same jobs, they are not getting the same opportunities, they are not getting the same wages when we talk about in context of workplace. So let's try to understand what Claudia Goldin wants to say. Now the important thing we need to know is that Claudia Goldin has won the Economics Nobel Prize, right? Economics Nobel Prize for his work on what? She has done the work for work research on workplace gender gap, right? Now, when we talk about, let's say, workplace gender gap, then we can trace the roots, according to her, trace the roots of this workplace gender gap that is basically coming from the institutions of family, from the institutions of society. So we can trace the roots from institutions of family and from the institutions of society, because what we have seen that in the family and as well in the society as well, there is an inclination towards, let's say, or it's a male oriented society or it is a man oriented society where men are given more credit, men are given more opportunities, and men are, let's say, getting more wages as well for their work, which might be the same work that they are doing as their to their female counterpart, but they must be getting or they might be getting better wages. So that particular thing, this workplace gender gap, it all stems from this particular institution from family and society, where it is a men dominated society or men dominated institutions or male dominated institutions. We can say these are men dominated institutions, because these are men dominated institutions and they are the ones that who will be, let's say, deciding what's going to be the, let's say, work culture of a workplace, what's going to be the pay scales, what's going to be the wages, what's going to be the job opportunities, right? And they are going to be the one that's going to become a part of the economic agent. These men would be the major players, or we can say when we talk about economic factors as well or economic agents as well. Now when it comes to workplace, then we see there are a lot of inhibitions when it is talking, or let's say talking about the extent of, when we talk about, let's say, related to hiring the woman, giving her opportunities, then talking about paying them on the same scale, right? So these are the things that we can see there is a certain discrimination and gender gap that is quite evident as well when we talk about in the workplace, because of the institutions of family and society, because of the thinking that is carried forward from the institution of family and society to a particular workplace. There we see a particular gender gap as well. You might have seen that a lot of, let's say, आजकल जो female influencers भी होते हैं, हमारे female celebrities भी हैं, we talk about a lot of our Hindi film industry, they also talk about that their male counterparts, both of them are doing the same work, but they are not getting the same wages as compared to their, let's say, male counterparts. The women are not getting the same wages, right? Women are not getting the same wages. So that is basically the thing that Claudia Goldin wants to say, that there still exists a lot of workplace gender gap. Now I will give you one particular example. You must have seen or must have heard about it as well, right? So you must have seen that the let's say the important companies, or let's say big companies, they are reluctant to hire, or let's say women who might, let's say, who is pregnant, right? Because they know that in the coming months they are going to give her the maternity leave and it would be difficult for them as well, right? तो ये अगर हम बात करें, ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा फैक्टर होता है जहां पे वुमेन को हायर करने में भी एक सबसे बड़ी, लेट्स से द इंपॉर्टेंट, वी कैन से इंपॉर्टेंट तो नहीं, एक ऑब्लिगेटरी प्रोविजन देखने को मिलती है फ्रॉम द, लेट्स से, अ पर्टिकुलर एमएनसी और पर्टिकुलर कंपनी, बिकॉज दे डोंट वांट टू हायर अ पर्टिकुलर वुमेन हु they would have to give a certain maternity leave for, let's say, another 6 months. So these are certain reasons, these are the certain things that one needs to understand when we talk about the research that this Claudia Goldin has basically done. But one thing you need to understand is, उसने सारी रिसर्च कर ली, उसने बता दिया क्या क्या रीजन है भाई, फैमिली से वही चीज चलती आती है, वही इकोनॉमिक वर्कप्लेस में भी देखने को मिलती है, और वही चीज देखने को मिलती है जहां पे इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटीज नहीं प्रोवाइड की जाती, ना ही वेजेस प्रोवाइड करी जाती हैं. बट वन थिंग यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड इज, शी डिडंट प्रोवाइड एनी सॉल्यूशंस, शी डिडंट गिव एनी सॉल्यूशंस फॉर दिस. उन्होंने कोई सॉल्यूशंस नहीं दिए बस उन्होंने एक बेसिक बताया है कि प्रॉब्लम क्या है और उस प्रॉब्लम का रीजन क्या है. आई होप यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग. क्लॉडिया गोल्डिन को क्या मिला है? इकोनॉमिक्स में नोबेल प्राइज मिला है. सो यू मस्ट बी अवेयर. अभी तक जो भी आपको समझ में आया होगा कि नोबेल प्राइज मिल रहे हैं, ईरानियन वुमेन को मिला पीस के लिए. देन यू गॉट सी मस्ट हैव सीन के क्वांटम डॉट्स के केमिस्ट्री के लिए मिला था. देन यू हैड द mRNA वैक्सीन, यू हैव गॉट द नोबेल प्राइज फॉर फिजियोलॉजी और मेडिसिन. राइट. Okay, moving to the next part. So these were the two important news that we had on our front page. Now moving to the next part. Okay, now this is related to Israel and Palestine. We have already discussed yesterday in detail, right? आज भी थोड़ा सा hint कर लेंगे और इसको और discuss कर लेंगे. Then this is around the silence around the state seizure of India's press. Now you must have known that there was a web news that we have, our internet news, that was One Click, whose founder has been arrested on certain suspicions that they were certainly related to setting a propaganda that was not according to the interest of the country, sovereignty of the country, security of the country, territorial integrity of the country. So they have been charged under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Now this is the viewpoint of the government, and I've told you that there is a viewpoint of other, let's say, journalists, civil society and NGOs as well, that their basically freedom of speech and expression is getting, let's say, hampered because of the restrictions that the government is trying to put on these particular, let's say, जो भी ये freedom of speech and expression के ऊपर कर रहे हैं. So we have already discussed this. No need to ponder into this particular topic, right? So this is related to India's best ever tele in Asian Games came from a diverse set of events, right? So पता होना चाहिए कि basic हमने Asian Games में बहुत अच्छा perform किया है. Now, mental health and the floundering informal worker. Now this is very, very interesting. Let's try to discuss. So there are two things that they have tried to discuss. One is the informal worker and one important thing, that is human mental health. These are the two areas where they are trying to bring a convergence related to this particular thing. Now, one of the thing we need to understand, let's stick to facts related to India. अगर मैं इनफॉर्मल वर्कर की बात करता हूं, मान लीजिए इंडिया के अंदर अगर हम बात करें 90% से ज्यादा जो वर्क फोर्स है दैट इज इन दी इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर. So this is a basic fact that we guys all know about, कि most of the people are in the informal sector, and if we talk about the statistics, there is 90% of workforce that is in the informal sector. Now when I talk about informal worker, I think you might get an idea that that particular person would not be getting health insurance or medical insurance, not getting, let's say, pension facilities, right? Not getting certain allowances, right? So that basically person could be employed on a contract basis or could be employed on a daily wage basis, right? So this is the thing that we can understand, that this informal worker could be employed on a contract basis without getting any social security, right? Contract workers, or they could be on the basis of daily wage workers. Now, one thing we need to understand in this particular context is, when we talk about a person who has not having, let's say, who is not eligible for social security benefits, right? So I can say informal worker generally is not eligible for social security benefits. And if we talk about 90% of our workforce is in the informal sector, so most of the people in our country doesn't have a, let's say, social security benefits. So let's say what after, अगर उनकी जॉब चली जाती है या उनकी जॉब लेट्स से टर्न टेन्योर पूरा हो जाता है, उसके बाद उनका क्या होगा? Who is gonna look for their medical facilities? Who is gonna look for their children? Who is gonna look for certain, let's say, after retirement pension? There is nothing that is in front of them. So that is basically creating a lot of mental health problems in India because of the insecurities that are there and associated with the informal sector. So I can say this particular informal way in which the workforce is working, it is having a direct impact on the mental health of the people. And if I talk about the mental health, people are also not aware of it, right? People को भी अगर हम आज की बात करें इंडिया के अंदर, अगर हम किसी को बोले यार हमें तेरी मेंटल हेल्थ ठीक नहीं लग रही, लोग ऑफेंड हो जाएंगे, लोगों को लगेंगे उनको बेवकूफ बोला जा रहा है या उनको पागल बोला जा रहा है, पर ऐसी बात नहीं है. मेंटल हेल्थ हैज अ लॉट ऑफ डायमेंशंस एज वेल. मे बी a person is suffering from depression, hypertension, right? It can lead to, let's say, blood pressure problems as well. Not stable, anxiety, right? So these are all the, we can say, scenarios of human mental health. So there are a lot of things that are there in India that contributes to a mental health problem, but one of the things that is being discussed in this article, it is this particular informal worker or the informal way in which our workforce is going, where majority of the people are employed in the informal sector. As you can see, 90% of the worker. Second thing you need to understand is, one of the other problem that you need to understand is, एक तो अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट एक बहुत बड़ा फैक्टर है, अगर लोगों के पास नौकरी नहीं होगी वो भी मेंटल हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट करता है. और दूसरा जो इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है, पुअर क्वालिटी ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट, दिस ऑल्सो प्लेज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल in disturbing the mental health of a person. So we can say poor quality of employment. When I talk about poor quality of employment, generally what I am referring it to is कि poor quality के अंदर आपको social security benefits नहीं मिल रहे हैं, आपको health facilities नहीं मिल रही हैं, आपको isolation में रखा जा रहा है, long working hours हैं, hazardous working conditions हैं. So you are basically not able to, let's say, cope up with this particular employment that you are getting, as it is very informal and the person or a laborer or a worker is getting exploited. As a result, it is creating a lot of stress on the human health of a person. So this is the point that we need to understand, that one important thing that the government has to do in order to make sure कि हमारे जो लेबर फोर्स है उनकी मेंटल हेल्थ बनी रहे और वो स्टेबल रहे और उनको ऐसी प्रॉब्लम्स फेस ना करनी पड़े. देयर हैज टू बी अ सोशल सिक्योरिटी नेट that has to be provided to these particular informal workers. So what is the need of the hour is, in order to avert this situation, there has to be a social security net that shall be provided to the workers. Then only these workers would be, let's say, not worrying about their future, not worrying about their medical bills, and as a result it can help in improving their mental health. देखो आज के टाइम पे अगर हम बात करें ना, मान लो कि किसी की सरकारी नौकरी है, तो लोग सरकारी नौकरी में, लेट्स से, व्हाट इज द, व्हाई द पीपल वांट टू गो इन द पब्लिक सेक्टर, राइट? बिकॉज वन ऑफ द इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग और द charm of public sector is that your social security is, let's say, we can say, is sorted when you enter a public sector. But that's the not case with the private sector. But there are certain private sectors which provide you a lot of opportunity, social security, but there is a lot of private sector where there is not enough in social security benefits that are provided to the persons. I hope this point is clear to everybody, right? So you can use this in your answers. If there is a question on mental health, then you can quote the data on unemployment and you can talk about most of the people in our country are employed in informal sector, right guys? Hanji. Any other thing you want to discuss on this particular thing? You have any doubt, you can ask me. हाँ, इसके अंदर हम एक चीज जोड़ सकते हैं कि हमारे बहुत सारे लेबर कोड्स हैं जो सोशल सिक्योरिटी फॉर्मल सेक्टर की बात करते हैं, इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर की इतनी बातचीत नहीं करते हैं. आप इसके अंदर ये चीज ऐड कर सकते हो, लाइक मनप्रीत हैज सेड कि राजस्थान के अंदर जो गिग वर्कर्स के लिए सोशल सिक्योरिटी बेनिफिट जो बिल लाया गया है जिसके थ्रू उनको सोशल सिक्योरिटी प्रोवाइड करी जाएगी. सो दैट इज अ commendable achievement on the part of the Rajasthan government that they are thinking about their gig workers, because one thing you need to understand is the nature of the economy or the employment in our country is getting changed from a very, we can say, formal sector. We are going for informal sector. We are going towards self-employment. We are going towards casual employment, right? So that is one of the reasons you have to understand that क्योंकि लोग इतने ज़्यादा informal sector में हैं, जैसे राजस्थान गवर्नमेंट ने initiatives लिए हैं, बाकी गवर्नमेंट्स को भी initiative लेनी चाहिए और at the center as well. Okay. Moving to the next part, the end of the two-state solution. Now, I think everybody knows two-state solution is related to Israel and Palestine. Now, there have been certain achievements that they have done over the years. Achievements ही बोलूंगा अगर इनके बीच में कोई पीस अकॉर्ड साइन होता है, जैसे ऑस्लो अकॉर्ड्स आए, राइट, वेयर दे ट्राई टू रिकॉग्नाइज, यार ये इसराइल है, ये पैलेस्टीन है. बट दिस पर्टिकुलर अटैक बाय हमास हैज जस्ट पुश देम और दिस two-state solution to a particular generation, right? This solution won't be reached within a particular generation. It has now extended beyond the generations. Now, when we talk about two-state solution, I think it is now completely out of the picture, because the way Hamas has came out with a terrorist attack on the land of Israel, that is not acceptable to Israel. They have started their, let's say, retaliation, and the situation is not good in the state of Israel and even in the state of Gaza or in the state of West Bank, right? So that is the thing that we need to understand. We have already discussed this in a lot. Yesterday, Anu sir and Dikshant sir also had a elaborate discussion on the podcast related to this whole issue. I hope you might have seen that particular. अगर हम बात करें podcast, do see that podcast. You will get a better insight and a more important facts related to Israel-Palestine issue, right? So this two-state solution that we are talking about, it is not achievable right now, right? But you might get a question in the prelims or in the mains related to two-state solution, so you must be aware of this particular topic. Okay. अब ये इंडिया के शेड्यूल्ड एरियाज की बात हो रही है, जैसे कि आपको फिफ्थ शेड्यूल में पता है कि फिफ्थ शेड्यूल टॉक्स अबाउट द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इन द शेड्यूल्ड एरियाज, देन सिक्स्थ शेड्यूल टॉक्स अबाउट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इन द ट्राइबल एरियाज. तो एक तरह से आपके ये पॉलिटी का कंसेप्ट है जो यहां पे डिस्कस किया गया है. सो जस्ट what you need to do is just have a screenshot of this and paste it in your notes whenever you have studied your articles, let's say 244 and fifth schedule and sixth schedule, because it's not going to give you another, let's say, very important information, but हाँ एक दो चीजें हो सकती हैं, फैक्ट्स हो सकते हैं जो आपके काम के हो सकते हैं. हम एक बार शॉर्ट में देख लेते हैं इसको, राइट? ये अगर हम बात करें, सो दिस इज द लेट्स से fifth schedule area districts, sixth schedule area districts and non-scheduled area districts that they have tried to represent over here in this particular map, as you can see, right? So what we can say is, अगर इंडिया की बात करें तो 705 शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब जो कम्युनिटीज हैं, that make up of India's 8.6% of the country's population. However, despite persistent demand by Adivasi organization, villages have been left out in the 10 states with scheduled areas, in other states with ST populations. Based on the 1961 report, what are the guidelines for declaring an area as a scheduled area? So this is the important prelims fact that you need to understand. What are the conditions that has to be there? तो दिभार कमीशन ने बोला था, एक तो सिग्निफिकेंट ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन होनी चाहिए, दूसरा कॉम्पैक्टनेस होनी चाहिए एरिया की, तीसरी वायबल एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एंटिटी होनी चाहिए, डिस्ट्रिक्ट होना चाहिए, ब्लॉक होना चाहिए या तालुका होना चाहिए, एंड देन देयर हैज टू बी अ इकोनॉमिक बैकवर्डनेस ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया. So these are the four key points that you need to understand. There has to be a significant tribal population, compactness of the region, it has to be economic backward, and there has to be an administrative entity, right? So that area could be declared as a scheduled area. I hope this point is clear to everybody. It was one of the simple things that you might have understood. Okay. Right, so these are all the political news that we have, right? We have already discussed this, no need to ponder again and again. Smart fence along the Myanmar border in the pipeline, government, so it might be there, advanced smart fencing system might come up along the Indo-Myanmar border, that is of around 100 किलोमीटर. बॉर्डर 100 किलोमीटर का नहीं है, जो है स्मार्ट फेंसिंग की बात कर रहे हैं वो आ सकती है अराउंड 100 किलोमीटर, राइट? ये सारी पॉलिटिकल न्यूज है. अब ये एक इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट है जो इन्होंने यहाँ पे बताया, अर्बन अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट रेट जो है वो डिप करके 6.6% तक पहुंच चुका है, बट ये सिर्फ Q1 का डेटा बता रहा है. Now when I talk about unemployment, I think everybody knows what is unemployment. It is a situation when a person is willing to do work but is not able to find a suitable work. That person is said to be unemployed in the country. And when we talk about unemployment, how it is being measured, you need to know the facts that you let's say understand in economics. But three things that you need to understand related to it is, what is labor force participation rate? Two things, sorry, labor force participation rate and what is unemployment rate. So let's say I'm going to discuss what are these two things. So first one is labor force participation rate and second one is unemployment rate, right? So these are the important two terminologies that you might encounter in your newspapers as well. So first one is, what is labor force participation rate? It is the total population over, this would be number of people who are employed plus number of people seeking work, number of people seeking work. So this would be your labor force participation rate. So when I talk about unemployment rate would be number of people seeking work divided by, so this whole thing would be divided, that is the labor force. So this is your unemployment rate, right? So these are the two important definitions that you guys need to understand, that what is labor force participation rate and what is unemployment rate. I hope you were able to understand this, right? So I think this is it for today. There is nothing much more than that in our today's newspaper. I hope you were able to understand it. अगर कोई डाउट है तो आप पूछ सकते हैं. हाँ जी. Any doubt you can have, you can ask me. Any doubt you have? Sorry. I don't know कि whether they are inviting applications or not. I don't know. See, PCS ka those who are very much let's say focused on PCS, their main aim is PCS. The preparation is almost the same. Focus on CSAT. That is also important for UPSC as well. Just you need to understand basically we can say Punjab part, right? So that is I think doable, right? So don't worry about that particular thing. Okay. So that's it, guys. I will see you tomorrow, same time, 9 a.m. Till then, take care and bye bye.